Within 5 minutes of going on YouTube, Gearspace or Reddit, you're going to be subjected to relentless propaganda designed to make you feel insecure about your setup. You're going to be told that your mixes sound flat because you're not running them through a $6,000 analog summing mixer. You're going to be told that stock plugins lack depth, that your audio interface sounds cold and digital, so you need to buy analog hardware to make it sound warmer. Well, long-time viewers of my channel are going to know exactly what I say to these kinds of claims. That's right, bullshit. Almost any time you go to the website of a manufacturer that is selling higher-priced analog summing mixers, microphone preamps, analog consoles, these kinds of products, you'll see in their marketing materials stuff like legendary tone, vintage character, the unmistakable warmth, pedigree, all of these kinds of words. And then you'll see in the same paragraph, sometimes even the same sentence, pristine sonic excellence, the highest quality components. And let's just have a look at some examples of exactly that. So here's a bunch of analog summing mixers. The first thing that you should notice is that they're all ridiculously expensive. This $6,000 summing mixer is a complete contradiction. It has pristine audio quality and clarity. It says here that it has unmatched sonic excellence, but it also has unparalleled character. It seamlessly merges analog warmth, and it has a full-bodied sound. It also widens your mix and adds a touch of transformer warmth or glue. But remember, that's all whilst it has pristine audio quality. We have the Neve summing mixer for $4,000. And if we have a look at this, it starts off by saying legendary warmth and presence, analog mojo, sonic heritage, legendary sound. But at the same time, it has exceptional sonic performance to completely eliminate crossover distortion, but it achieves remarkable purity. Stop and think about what these two different categories of terms mean. So on one hand, we have character, warmth, vintage tone, and these kinds of things. In engineering terms, that means it's adding harmonic distortion, it's rolling off frequencies, it's modifying the frequency response, it's saturating in specific nonlinear ways. That's what tone is. Tone is the deviation from an accurate representation of the input signal, whereas high quality in the technical sense means the opposite. It means low noise, low distortion, flat frequency response, transparency. So what that means when it comes to an amplifier, for example, is what comes in one side comes out the other side identical, except it's just louder or whatever level you've set it to. So it doesn't do anything at all to the tone. So that's what it's meant in the entire history of audio electronics. So you have to ask the question, which is it? Is the box coloring your sound and therefore it is not transparent, it is low quality in audio engineering terms, or at least not transparent, or is it higher quality and pristine? What is it? It can't be both at the same time. Why don't more people call out this bullshit? And the truth is that the pro audio industry spends millions of dollars trying to hide that exact fact, that exact contradiction. It's like doublethink. Everything in your standard signal chain between your microphone and your speakers, everything is a solved problem at this point, whether it's the preamps, whether it's the cables, whether it's digital recording technology itself, whether it's amplification, plugins, everything is pretty much a solved problem. It's done. It's been solved years ago. But what do I mean by solved problem? I mean, it used to be a problem and now it isn't. So back in the day, you kind of had to buy expensive stuff. If you wanted to record clean with low noise, you went for something like Neve, API, Telefunken, or whatever Neumann, whatever expensive companies at the time, they were building real solid stuff to the highest quality for the tech that they had available at the time. And nowadays, all of the color that people refer to as the vintage, legendary tone, none of that was intentional at the time. They didn't want to make stuff that sounded broken. They were trying to build the cleanest, highest quality stuff at the time. And it just was that the technology that they had available didn't allow the kind of transparent, pristine sound that we have access to easily today. But now, just a few decades later, the technology has improved so much that the engineers at Abbey Road and all of the legendary studios from back in the day, they would have loved to get their hands on a $200 Focusrite interface or whatever. So with today's technology, you absolutely do not need to spend thousands and thousands on getting the best conversion or whatever, because conversion is essentially a solved problem. At this point, it's basically just how many channels can you get for your bang for buck. I've made a video on that before. And in terms of like DAW, like stock plugins and stuff, it's not about stock plugins, the EQs sound cold and thin or harsh or anything like that. It's all nonsense. I've made videos on that before that you can just completely count, you can know all of these EQs. They pretty much just know almost completely, like down to like minus 80 dB or whatever in some cases. It's ridiculous. All of the EQs just sound the same. So how can all of these manufacturers sell this outrageously expensive hardware stuff, compressors and mic pre's and summing mixers and all this outrageously expensive stuff for thousands and thousands of dollars, when it just does the same stuff as you can do for a couple $100, or maybe just in your DAW for like a $15 plugin or something? How can they get away with it? Why, where is the difference? It's because they're not selling technical superiority anymore like they were back in the day when Neumann was making actually superior microphones. Nowadays, you can get cheap stuff, which is great. So it's not technically superior. So what are they selling you for this outrageous price? They're selling you nostalgia. That's it. They're just selling you marketing and emotional manipulation through nostalgia. So when they use words like warmth and mojo and vintage and analog glue, do you know what those words actually mean in electrical engineering terms? They mean distortion. That's it. So all of these companies that are selling you stuff for $8,000 for a summing mixer, blah, 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 what they're selling you is distortion. Now, does distortion sound bad in a mix? No, of course it doesn't. It can sound really good, but you don't need to spend $8,000 or whatever it is on some outrageously expensive hardware unit. You can get the asymmetrical, vintage sounding, nice tone from Class A circuitry and transformers in plugins. Yes, it's not that difficult, and if you don't know of a decent plugin that can get that tone, well, I made a plugin called Class A, which literally just costs $14, and you could just go and buy that and you can get all of that vintage legendary tone that they're selling you for $8,000. You can get it for $14. But like I said before I put the price up the first time, buy it now before I put the price up again. So don't fall for the hype around saturation. You can just do it all in plugins. You don't need analog hardware. And 100% do not fall for the hype when it comes to summing, when people say that DAWs can't sum properly and you need to do that in the analog domain because of some insert mumbo jumbo nonsense. If you think your mix sounds weak, cold and narrow, it's probably not because you don't have an analog summing mixer. It's probably just because your mix sounds weak, cold and narrow, and it's a skill issue and not an analog hardware deficit issue. Now, a lot of people like to hear some of what I say, like those things are solve problems like preamps and audio conversion and that kind of stuff. And they like to extrapolate that out and make it sound like everything is a solved problem. I think that everything is snake oil and there's nothing that's worth spending your money on. Well, I don't think that at all. Like, for example, microphones and speakers and headphones, and if you listen to records, the cartridge and the stylus, they're not entirely solved problems. We've gotten very good at a lot of those things. And for example, you can get DPA measurement microphones, which are extremely linear, and many like speakers can be extremely linear, but they're not entirely solved problems. And acoustic treatment isn't a solved problem either. You can't bypass the physics with room EQ, room correction. These hardware boxes or the software that people sell you to do room correction is all bullshit. Because the second you move your head from here to there, now you've got a different sound. And the EQ curve that was valid here is no longer valid there when you've moved your head. And so it's all just bullshit. Headphones are another such problem. Everyone has slightly different shaped ears, so it's incredibly difficult to create a pair of headphones which are going to work for everyone, if not impossible. Stem splitting, for example, if you want to get an original recording from the 70s or something, don't have access to the multitrack, you want to split that out into stems, well, there's some very good AI stuff trying to do that now, but it's not a solved problem. Most of it just sounds absolutely crap. I think anyone who works in live sound will agree that there's many things that aren't solved problems in live sound. Live sound is incredibly difficult to get right, to get perfect. Now, I don't know that much about live sound, but I know that you've got higher frequency roll off the further away you are from the speakers, and you can try and fix that with delay towers, but then you've got time alignment issues and phase issues, and all of these things are incredibly difficult, not solved problems. The more delay towers you have, the more comb filtering and echoing and weird stuff you get. You can't have a perfect sounding spot everywhere in the audience. If you perfect it for this spot, when it might not sound good over there, and if you're over there, it might not sound good over there. Live sound is incredibly difficult to get right. But when we go back to preamps and cables and power amps and mixers and audio interfaces and conversion and clocking and digital audio, all of these are solved problems. So if your mixes don't sound like professional records, I guarantee you it's not because you didn't have an analog summing mixer, it's not because you don't have an SSL or Neve console, it's not because you used a stock EQ instead of a $200 vintage EQ analog plugin thing, or the 4,000 euro analog EQ. At the end of the day, if your mix sounds bad, it's probably either because your monitoring sucks or because it's a skill issue. And if you don't know where to start on either of those things, check out my website, apmastering.com.